The guy, during all this, has started to scream to his friends to get his gun and kill him. Once he has him in a leg lock, he looks down and says, "Now I'm gonna kill you," before he starts to choke my dad with his legs. Police officers of Reddit, what's the craziest situation and callouts you have ever experienced? Story 1. Showed up to a call once about a baby crying non-stop for hours and no sign of an adult being home. We went into the house and I followed the sound of the crying baby upstairs, to find an 18-month-old with her arms duct taped to her crib. I undid the duct tape and it was obvious this was not the first time it had happened. I brought the child downstairs and outside. The mom was walking up the sidewalk of the housing unit and flipped the bird on me. I handed the child off to a patrol and cuffed her. It was the most satisfying clicking of handcuffs I had ever heard. Update. This happened when I was in the army as an MP. The father of the child was deployed at the time. From what I heard, he was granted permission to return home and take custody of the child. They got a divorce and I believe he won custody. I don't know what happened to her as far as a sentencing or jail time. Story 2. Responded with my partner to a welfare check on an elderly gentleman. Knocked on the door, walked in and couldn't find him. Went to his garage and found him sound asleep behind the wheel. He tried to unalive himself by asphyxiation. Thing is, he only had a small amount of fuel and it was a new Civic. He was pissed when he woke up that I wasn't St. Peter. Story 3. Definitely the time that an older, mentally ill woman tried to burn her house down, because she believed that was the only way to disarm the atom bomb in her attic. I got her to walk with me to my car and get in the back by telling her it was the only place she'd be safe. When I got in and started driving, she started yelling that I couldn't take her to jail because she hadn't done anything wrong. I calmly informed her that we were going to the hospital, which prompted even louder yelling of, "I'm not crazy." I replied, "I don't think you're crazy." She screamed, "Then why are you taking me to the hospital?" I told her, "Well, you were next to that atom bomb, right? We gotta get you checked for radiation poisoning." Her eyes got wide and she said, "Oh shit. I didn't think about that, you better hurry." Story 4. Attended a structural fire in a downtown high-rise. Was tasked with evacuating residents in case the building collapsed. Third house I went to, the guy answers in a full bunny suit with gas mask propped up in his head. English wasn't his first language, and as I was trying to communicate that he needed to evacuate, it became clear he was running a meth lab inside. Arrested Asian Walter White. And then had to sit in the shadow of the structure fire keeping eyes on the house while waiting for clear, clandestine lab team to show up. In that time fire trucks basically surrounded my vehicle so I couldn't move it, even after clear team moved in. Walter had his lawyer call in my PC, and it was about 10 hours before we could head back to cells. I've never had to piss so badly in my life. Story 5. Not a cop, but a cop friend of mine in SE Washington, D.C. He got a domestic disturbance call and arrived to a calm scene. The husband explained he and his wife had been arguing, and that she had gone over the top, but they were both fine now. The wife confirmed the story, but stated she didn't want the husband back in the house that night. My friend asked if the husband had a place to go, and he agreed to go to his mother's house for the night. The husband left, then my friend and his partner left soon after. About an hour later, they get a call back to the same house. When they get there, the husband is in the kitchen dead. The wife explains that right after the police left, her husband came back and resumed arguing with her. He got in her face and she stabbed in the neck with a chicken bone, hitting his carotid artery. Story 6. I ain't a cop, but my dad is, and this happened when I was on a ride along with him quite a few years ago. Relatively short one this time. After eating our lunch, we went down to a runoff point so he could finish some of his reports. That's usually why you see a lot of cops on the side somewhere that isn't directly connected to the main road. I was on my phone watching some videos, when he got called in to check something that was happening up the road. I was sitting in the car the entire time this happened. Headed up the road to a construction site, by that time it had been active but non-progressing for 5 years, where a bunch of people were just standing around looking weird, dressed in weird suits and obvious fake construction costumes with fake hard hats. A representative of the construction company had called the police down when these people showed up and didn't say a single thing for hours. Backup arrived and about 6 cops were trying to get 24 people to say anything. After a half hour passed, every single one of the trespassers began to dance and music began to blare from portable speakers. It went on until the song ended, at which point one of the dancers stood up and said, "Danielle, Kyle has an important question for you. Everyone was motionless until the person who stood up started looking around and asked if either of those people were there. It took another 5 minutes before a threat of arresting everyone came to head and got the speaker to finally begin talking about what was going on. Turns out someone had hired a flash mob crew. They were a bigger thing back then, for a marriage proposal, but no one showed up. After all of that was done, my dad found out that the person who hired the flash mob did so to rob a jewelry store up the road and assumed that the flash mob would draw all the police to the site. Not having enough intelligence to realize a flash mob trespassing on a mostly empty machine-free yard wouldn't rank higher than an armed robbery of a jewelry store. The guy was clever in a yes, 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 no kind of way. The idea was logical, but the execution and targets were absolute dog crap. He bragged about it, and was stupid enough to think that saying, "You can't prove the flash mob was me," when literally no one asked him about the flash mob. He was smart but also extremely dumb. His name was actually Kyle. His wife is actually named Danielle, and he paid the flash mob crew with his own money. Dumb. I would pay to have a video of his lawyer's face. I doubt it was a fun day for them. Story 7. I babysat for a cop, 2 toddler daughters, 10 out of 10 kids, cute and very affectionate. And he told me of one story where he was called to this old lady's home. When they got there, they found her husband's rotting body under a pile of newspapers. So apparently the lady had bad dementia and had thought the husband was a robber and hit him in the back of the head with a rolling pin. The poor dementia lady went back to bed and he was dead in the morning. She didn't know what to do, so she covered his body with newspapers and somehow managed to survive on her own for a few days. A neighbor started to worry and came to check up on them. The neighbor was the one to call the police. That story haunted me for like a month. Story 8. Answered a disturbance call to find a drunk dude climbing in a car while his wife screamed at him. She smacked his windshield with a bat, destroying it as he peeled out. We followed him maybe 0.5 mile with the sirens and lights while he drove with his head out the window, Ace Ventura style. Poor guy didn't get his head back inside in time, passing a UPS truck. His head pieces ended up on my windshield. Story 9. Not a police officer, but I know one. I'm sure he has a million stories, but my favorite that he's told me was the time he was called to a local Mexican restaurant. When he arrived, he was directed to a Cadillac in the parking lot that was a rocking, if you get my drift. He knocks on the window, and a butt-ass naked 80-year-old woman gets out. Pissed off that someone interrupted her getting laid. Her 80-year-old husband was laying naked in the vehicle still. This old woman stood outside of her vehicle, completely naked, for a solid 5 minutes, arguing with my friend about how she should be able to get laid whenever she wants. He didn't arrest them, even though she stood naked outside for 5 minutes, so she got off easy, pun intended. Story 10. I just asked my dad, who was a cop for 30+ years. He told me he pulled over a car full of woodchucks, older drunkards from a rural area in the northeast area of the US. He was in his late 20s at the time, so in good shape compared to the drugs. I think there were 4. While my dad was processing the driver, he had him in the front seat of his car. Once the guy realized he was probably going to be arrested, he started ripping the radio and anything he could grab out of his car. He grabbed my dad and pulled him out of the passenger side of his vehicle and onto the ground. My dad landed between this guy's legs and into some kind of leglock chokehold. The guy, during all this, has started to scream to his friends to get his gun and kill him. Once he has him in a leglock, he looks down and says, "Now I'm gonna kill you," before he starts to choke my dad with his legs. I guess backup showed up just in time, or had been there. The deputy at the time hit him in the head with a baton and sent him out. Story 11. My partner and I once received a call out about an escaped swan. Let me tell you, we definitely did not have any luck catching it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more crazy videos.